Hi, everybody, and good morning. I'll stick to my time so I don't take break time away from you. So I'm Chris, and I'm the Strategic Director for Fugro in the Middle East and India regions. And as my colleague Dr. Talia mentioned, Fugro is the world's leading geodata provider. So we have more than 60 offices around the world and more than 11,000 people. But what we do with those resources and the geodata is help our clients to de-risk their projects and let them understand in the geospace that they work in. So that's what we do with all these resources. So I've been in the Middle East for about 20 years, and yesterday I was having breakfast and there was two small kids playing with their little cars while their parents were having breakfast. And it suddenly took me back to when I was a kid and playing with my little cars in the dirt and building tunnels and bridges and all of that. And I think that played a role in me becoming a civil engineer. And I think naively I thought when I'm an adult, I'm also going to have so much fun playing with little cars and making my roads. But now we are stuck with concept designs and detailed designs and method statements and risk assessments. So maybe one day when I retire, I can get back to that civil engineering that I really want to do. So that brings me to, I also have two boys of my own, little Tristan and Niels, and they're 10 and 12. So they're quite interested in what I do. Last year I went to COP29 to present there, and they were quite interested in that. And the other day we were walking with a dog, and they were also asking me, what am I presenting at the MENA Stormwater? And I said, well, I'm going to speak about when we build infrastructure, stormwater, what do we need to think about and what do we need to consider to make it all work? And I also explained to them about the big storm that was in the UAE last year. And I said a lot of rain fell, it was quite a big storm, the kids couldn't go to school, some kids couldn't get back from school, we couldn't get to the hospitals couldn't get back to us, we couldn't get food, and the food couldn't get to us. And it's quite a big problem, and we need to now see what we can do so when this happens again, we are better prepared. Now, this is when the eldest one, the 11-year-old one, said, Papa, that's a very simple problem. You know, when we go camping, so we camp all around the world, and it's going to rain, we dig a trench around our tent, and then the water falls and runs away. So he's like, why don't you just dig a big trench, take a big pipe, and put it in? And I thought, oh, it's a pretty good idea. And the youngest one then turned around, and I think this was just to challenge his brother, and he said, well, you can't just waste the water, it's a valuable resource. And I thought, wow, okay, tell me more. So I said, okay, Niels, what do you think we should be doing then? And he's like, well, I think we should capture it and drink it. And I'm like, yeah, pretty good idea. And I said, what else? And he said, I think we should take it and then put it in the ocean so when it's summertime, we can swim in the sea and the sea water is not that warm. It doesn't quite work like that, but you can see his mind is going. Anyway, at that stage, the eldest one just looked at us both and walked away going, it's a simple problem. The youngest one looked at me and going, it's really cool that you are solving climate change and making the world awesome and safe, and he walked away. And I looked at the dog, and the dog looked at me, and the dog said, you better go tell him that you're not doing this alone. There's a whole team. And if you wonder if I did tell him, of course I didn't. He thinks I'm pretty cool still. But why am I telling you this? Because they're right. They are both right. It's a very simple problem. It's a very simple problem in civil engineering. We've been doing this for hundreds, if not thousands of years. We can get the water and move it away. That's easy. But times are changing. We have words like resilience. We have words like climate change. We have words like sustainability. And these things makes it complicated. So these things are also not linear. These are problems that changes over time. So now we are building something that takes decades to put in place, and during that time, these goalposts shift. So it's complicated. So what we normally do, and I mean, we are very good at this, and this is where Fugro, with the de-risking that I'm speaking about, is, as example, at the bottom, we've got a project there, so we go through our technologies that we have, the screening, the site characterization. all the way through the project life cycle. And initially, the project risk is quite high because we don't know the area that we're working in. And we put a lot of effort in that early stages to de-risk it. And then as the project life cycle goes on, the risk reduces because we understand what we are doing. And I think as an industry, we're pretty good at that. But now, for example, we're bringing climate change, tracking it, adapting to it, understanding it. Now look at this risk profile. If we have existing infrastructure in place, that risk was reduced initially. But now climate change happens. We need more sustainability. Our resilience objectives change. So now that risk profile is increasing. If we do a new project now, both those risk profiles start up high. And how do they look over the project lifetime? So imagine what we can have is early data to make decisions on right in front of the concept design stage even. We have information about our assets that's existing, what state they are in, how they perform in the past, and how long we think they're going to last, and how quickly are they going to recover after events. Having data for early risk assessment, for early understanding what changes. How does the climate change? What do we think is going to happen? And bringing it all in and making decisions based on that. And then importantly, what impact are these storm events having before we construct our stormwater or our infrastructure, during construction, and once they are constructed? Once a storm event is there, how long does it take to get back? Well, the good thing is about this is that these technologies are all available. They're right there. We use them every day. We have them. So we can achieve this. And also when we look at water and the infrastructure you're putting in, we need to look at it holistically. We need to look at it from where it comes from. The runoff areas. How are we going to capture it? Can we do aquifer storage? This is clean water. We look at areas where we're going to develop into the future. We can go back right now, over years, and find out when it rains, where does it pond, where does it stand. And we can start bringing in geology, hydrogeology, and we know when we develop there what we need in order to keep it safe. We have a current build-up areas. We can map that, we can monitor it, we know what's happening there. And then the water ends up in the ocean. So Niels wants to cool the ocean to swim, but in effect, that changes water quality, it affects biodiversity, it changes sea patterns, and that also affects the deeper ocean. So it's a lot we need to consider, and it is possible, and it is required. And for that, what's required, and we spoke about that earlier already, and I'm sure today more people are going to mention it, the integrated solution. So we can easily start using satellite Earth observation data to map out various aspects. I mean, we can go 20 meters below the sea level to do bathymetry mapping. And using that and then refining it with air technology, sea, we can do the surface, we can do the bottom of the ocean, we can scan the surface on land, we can go into the hydrogeology quite quickly and quite easily, initially, and develop it over the project life cycle. And then we bring in our AI and machine learning. And this is constantly developing. And the issue with this is what is required by the clients, because that's then what you need to bring it in. And then very importantly, putting it in a digital platform that is accessible, because otherwise you just have a load of data. So on a load of data, we all have files and PDF files, and different suppliers have different sets of data, different quality data. It's all ones and zeros, and this, Talia spoke about the data trilemma, and it's a problem. So having all this data is just one thing, but we have different stakeholders. from clients that want to see pictures to universities that want to do analysis in depth. So that data needs to then be formed in a way so we can use it. And this is what we spend a lot of time on, and what we do. So we take data sets, and you take all your different data sets. We sort them, you arrange them, you visually present them. Of course, we want to see stuff. Only specialists understand detailed formulas and spreadsheets. We need to understand what's all happening. And then we put a story together. This is how it looks. This is how it's going to work. This is what we know. This is what we don't know. And then the most important thing is we can then make decisions. We can then do actionable decisions based on information. And if we design something, and again, it was mentioned earlier, it takes decades sometimes now to put this in place. We've gone from large to mega to giga projects now. This is massive projects. So in that period that is constructed, things change. And that's why putting it all together and understanding it is so important when we do it. This is last year. This is very quick satellite data we took, and you can see how easy it is to kind of find out, with satellite Earth observation, for example, where it floods, where it's going to flood, where it did flood. And I can guarantee you we can very quickly go back over years and predict where the ponding will take place. You combine that then with technology such as rapid SOS that we have, which links in emergency services, so you know which access roads you're not going to be able to use and make a plan and bounce back quite quickly. And then ultimately, putting it in a platform like Vigeo, something like this, where you have all your data sets together, and you can then access it, do your risk assessment, plan ahead, run scenarios, bring in the climate change data, and make these useful decisions that we need. So, just in a nutshell, we can manage the water. It is pretty easy. It's a big pipe, but it's not. But luckily, as the climate is changing and as our challenges are getting bigger, so our technology is also moving forward. And we need to embrace that and roll with the times, and that will be our biggest tool and asset in the future. That concludes my presentation. I'm joined by a few colleagues here as well, and we have a booth outside. I think it's booth number 1. For any questions or comments, I'll be happy to discuss it. And also thank you for your time, and it's great that everybody's around in this room, because it's people like us that makes the difference. Otherwise it's not going to happen. Thank you very much.